If I look back over the last, you know, 7, 8 years since March 2016, we're in March 2024 right now. So do the math, 8 years. If I were to look back at those 8 years, and it's been a journey from dark to light. And I want to give you a little perspective about where my life was 8 years ago, and not just I've told the story over and over about where I was in my health and in losing my job and losing almost losing my marriage. I've told that story over and over again. I want to go inside. I want to tell you what it was like to be inside of the mind and body of Mike Kitko. It was dark inside of my mind. Were thoughts of inadequacy and insignificance. I was so scared well, before I lost my job, I was scared of losing my job. It was like what would I do? I would like almost the thoughts were that I would be on the verge of death, of just bankruptcy if I ever lost my job. And I was scared to lose my house. I this house, that I live in now, it's not a mansion by any means, but I grew up in a lower middle class, you know, a house in the middle of Baltimore City, and it was tiny and it was dusty and it was dark, and it was 100 years old or whatever, and there were a bunch of us, and we didn't have a lot of room. I mean, it wasn't a very materialistic upbringing. We had enough, but we didn't have excess. But I was, if I ever lost my house, it's like I would lose my life. There was so much insecurity raging inside of my mind, and so many thoughts of what if my wife left me, and what if I lost my job, and what if I lost my house. It was like those thoughts were prevalent and prominent. Like, what do they think about me? How am I perceived? Like, I can't get rejected. I can't let people down. There was just the need for approval was super high in me, like not just from my wife and my children, but from bosses and employees. And just the need for approval was just so anchored into my mind and body. And the fears, the thoughts were, if I ever got exposed, and why I wrote a book called The Imposter in Charge, if I ever got exposed for not being good enough, then the rest of my life, like my life would collapse, and the rest of my life would be lived in ruin. And these are the thoughts that I had, that I had to work was doing something you didn't want to do for money, not enjoying the work that you were doing. You needed to just kill yourself to make money. Like, if it wasn't hard, it wasn't valuable. And if it wasn't hard, then you were lazy. These thoughts were like prominent and prevalent. And I would just, but I didn't understand what was happening in my mind. And inside my body, there was so much depression and so much anger and so much hostility and vengeance. I remember when I was a child, I remember probably being 4 or 5 years old, and we had a dog, and this dog's name was Boomer. It was my first dog. And I just remember biting Boomer for no reason. I would be sitting there and I would be loving on him and I would be petting him, and he was my buddy. Then I would bite him until he cried. And there's no child that does that that's not angry. There's no child 4 or 5 years old that hurts another being without being angry. There was an expression of anger and rage in me, and I never, like, I didn't outrun that. And I remember getting angry at my wife, and I remember exploding at my wife and exploding at my children. There was so much anger and so much anxiety and bouts of depression. And I would drink until I blacked out, and I would eat whenever I was bored. It was just there was so much internal conflict inside of my body, in my heart. There wasn't I remember feeling love for my children. I remember feeling love, but that love would turn to rage in like a just a flip of a switch. And all of that shit was inside of me. That wasn't caused or generated by the world. And this is a really important and valuable insight, is when you think about emotion, when you think about anxiety, when you think about depression, when you think about uh, fear, when you think about shame or guilt or anger or jealousy, these are things that are not caused by the outside world. These feelings are feelings that are locked inside of you. This is a really, really important thing for you if you really want a fulfilled life, a fulfilling life. If you really want to live an inspired life, please anchor in this concept. When you're scared, when you're fearful, when you're anxious, those are not generated by external circumstances. They're generated by pain that already exists inside of you. And these experiences are just showing you what's inside of you. And I want you to think about it like, and I'm if you're watching my video, I'm actually holding my hands, but I want you to think about emotion and anger and all this internal conflict in this simple term. If you had an orange and you had and right now I'm holding up my left hand. If I'm holding up an orange in my left hand and I'm holding a knife in my right hand, it emotions like stabbing the orange with the knife, and when you pull out the knife, what's going to happen to the juice? The juice is going to start coming out. The orange juice is going to start coming out of the orange. The hole that the knife created is going to start exposing the juice that's coming out of the orange. Now, did the knife create the orange juice? No. The knife just revealed the juice that was already inside of the orange. And this is the same as emotion. This is the same as anger and depression and shame and jealousy and vengeance and rage. Circumstances and experiences outside of you do not create those emotions. Those experiences do not create those emotional conditions, those feelings. That the experience outside doesn't reveal the inner conflict or doesn't create the inner conflict. It reveals the conflict that's already raging inside of you. When when you when your bank account goes down to near nothing and now you're feeling anxious about money, the level of money didn't cause that feeling of anxiety about your money. The situation with the money just revealed a financial conflict that was already inside of you. Something outside of you cannot create something in you. It will reveal what's already there. This is a super critical to self mastery. This is a super critical concept to harness and grasp. Because if you really want to the highest quality life, you must take ownership of everything in your life and stop being a victim in any way, shape, or form. Because if you're a victim, then things outside of you have control over you. And then you're helpless. You are just waiting for good shit or bad shit to happen to you. That's living like a victim. When you realize that nothing outside of you controls anything inside of you, that you are in control. You have a mind, you have a body, but you are the spirit within. You are the awareness within. You are not your mind and you are not your body, and these things outside of you do not determine the feelings that your awareness experiences. But you can do something about them. And that's what we're going to talk about today. When you feel anger, when you feel anxiety, when you feel jealousy, when you feel vengeance, when you feel shame and guilt, when you feel depression, you can do something with these. You can. They don't happen to you. Experiences have revealed what's already inside of you. Now, I'm gonna give you three books. I got prepared a little bit. going to give you three books. The first time I ever really understood these concepts, it was because of a book, and I'm holding it up now. It was a book by an author named Michael Singer, and it's called The Untethered Soul. Now, Michael Singer is a powerful, powerful spiritual teacher. And he's nearing the end of his life. I visited his temple in Florida. He lives in Gainesville, Florida. Brian Schroeder and his family and I visited, and Keith Ulmer. We visited his temple down in Gainesville a couple years ago, and what an awesome experience that is. And listen, Michael Singer also has books like The Surrender Experiment and Living Untethered. Just he's an amazing author. And I would highly encourage you to dive into the teachings and the works of Michael Singer, starting with The Untethered Soul. It'll change your life. But what The Untethered Soul showed me and helped me understand, and I'm going back 8 years now, what The Untethered Soul first helped me understand was that when you experience something like in during your life, let's say and one day I was I've told this story before. One day I was walking home from the park with my dad, and we grew up in the middle of Baltimore City, so we didn't have any grass or trees. We had to walk to the park to go and play baseball. But we were walking back from the park, and I remember having the bat over my shoulder and the glove, and a cop car drove by us. And I said to my dad, I said, I'm glad you'll never get locked up and you'll never go to prison. And my dad said, son, you never know. You don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes good people get accused of doing bad things, right? And sometimes you just have to, my father was basically saying you just got to hope for the best, but you just don't know. Now, in when you're dealing with a 6-year-old, 7-year-old kid, what I heard was there's always a chance that my dad was going to go to jail. And it built a belief that good people, bad things happen to good people that are completely out of their control. And you know what? I lived from that place for the next 37, 40 years because it had built a belief. It had built an inner story, a thought, a belief, a story, a mental a mental construct that created an emotional feeling, emotional condition that there was always like you were always on the verge of bad, really bad shit happening to you that was completely out of your control. And when you're impressionable, at your most impressionable, between the ages of 0 and 7, you'll believe anything you're taught. And when you believe these things, they become your reality. And when I was reading The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, he calls these things thorns, that you have an experience and they get stored in your body as a thorn, in your mind or in your body as a thorn. And then you live life to protect and guard that thorn so that you never have to feel it. And you literally try to rearrange the world, rearrange life, rearrange people, get people to stop saying certain things, try to get people to only say certain things. You rearrange life. You increase your bank account so that you can think different thoughts, so that you can feel different things, because you're trying to avoid certain thorns that are in your body. Like, let's say you like, I'll remember. Here's another situation. I remember when I was a young kid, and my parents, like, I don't know how they came into a little bit of money. I think they won the lottery. I really do. Believe it or not, it was like maybe $1,000. And I remember they put it on a cabinet, a shelf in the house. And I remember somebody stole it. Somebody came into our house and stole it. So and then at that time, that $1,000 was a very large sum of money to me. And the story that I believed is that when you accumulate money, it's going to go away. It's going to go away. Somebody's going to take it from you. That it's just no one gets their money and keeps it. It was a story, a mental construct. And when I started accumulating money, and my wife and I started accumulating money very early in our relationship, when we started accumulating money, I was waiting for it to go away. because that's what happened to money. When you accumulate it, it goes away. So I was always on guard. This was a thorn that was inside of me that I was trying to avoid, right? And I was trying to make more to avoid it going away. Even though it was an untrue condition, it was a thorn that got lodged in my mind and in my body. And I rearranged circumstances and I did things and I said yes when I wanted to say no and no when I wanted to say yes to try to avoid feeling the thorn that money just goes away, it just vanishes. So we rearrange circumstances outside of us to try not to feel these thorns that get lodged in our bodies from our experiences. And if you look at the way people live life, most people are running around completely in survival mode, trying to rearrange the external world to protect and avoid feeling the thorns that are locked inside of them. Maybe they got left by a teenage they had a teenage relationship and they got left, and now then they were alone and they felt rejected and they don't want to feel rejected, so now they're a people pleaser because they have a thorn in their body that you're trying to avoid, and they rearrange and live life solely to try to avoid feeling things in their body that are already. It's not like they're being created by those circumstances. They already were stored. They were already created. I hope this is making sense. Your experiences actually store energy. Emotion is energy in motion, and when there's an experience, the energy in motion gets stuck in your body, stuck in your mind, and it becomes a thorn. And we rearrange. I'm going to say it 1,500 times. Hopefully, it'll sink in. We rearrange circumstances to try to avoid feeling these thorns that are lodged in our body. The Untethered Soul helped me understand that. The second book I'm going to hold up is called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by a gal named Debbie Ford. What an awesome book. And this is about what's called shadow work. Now, shadow work is getting into those experiences, getting into that pain and understanding it, getting into your mind, getting into your body, diving deep into these experiences, understanding them, becoming aware of them, and then learning how to harvest them, how to release them, how to get them out of your body. And that's the process of letting go. All three of these books are about the process of letting go. And when you get into a deep meditative state and you get into theta brainwave state, so there's beta, there's alpha, there's theta, and then there's delta. And theta is the third, the third lowest brainwave state. Delta is right below that. That's where you go into REM sleep. But right above that is theta. And theta is where you have access to your subconscious mind. And when you get into a deep meditative state, you start to access the subconscious mind. And that's when, that's when I first remembered about the molestation that happened to me when I was a child that I had suppressed. Some of the abandonment and abuse that I had experienced that I repressed and I suppressed and I buried under food and alcohol and work. I buried like these traumas under all this stuff, and it wasn't until I got into my subconscious mind in theta brainwave state in meditation that I started to understand, to become aware of them, and start the process of letting go. And Dark Side of the Light Chasers is where Debbie Ford helps you understand shadow work, get into your subconscious mind, get deep inside the recesses of your mind and body, start to become aware of all the pain that's in there, and start the process of letting them go. And when you let them go, good, higher level thoughts and higher level emotions replace them. And I'll talk more about that in a second. The last book that I want to go over today is a book called Letting Go, and it's by a fellow named Dr. David Hawkins. Now, Dr. David Hawkins he was a spiritual teacher, but he also spent his whole life devoted to the cause of understanding the emotional levels of consciousness, the scale of consciousness. all the way from shame and guilt and anger and just unhealthy pride and fear at the lower level, all the way up to joy and peace and love and enlightenment on the higher end. And what Dr. David Hawkins helped me understand is that someone who's suicidal, like I was in 2016, that suicidalness is caused by shame. Shame is the feeling like you're broken. Not that there's something wrong with you. Guilt is that you did something wrong. Shame is that you are a bad person. You are a broken person. And I felt broken. I felt damaged. I felt flawed. I felt like there was something wrong with me. I felt like I was a mistake in this world. And what Dr. David Hawkins helped me understand is that at the bottom end of the scale of consciousness is shame, and above that is guilt. And when you let go of shame, you move into guilt. And when you let go of guilt, you move into the next highest level. And when you let go of that level, you move into the next highest level. And you keep letting go of these feelings and these thoughts, and you start to ascend the levels of consciousness. And there's no shame left in me anymore. There's no grief left in me anymore. There's no anger left in me anymore. I just ascend the scale of consciousness, not by rearranging the work outside of me or rearranging the world outside of me, but by understanding what's happening in my mind and body and letting these things go. And when you let them go, they're replaced by higher level thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. Now, here's the most interesting part of this is when I started this work, what it felt like is when a shameful thought popped up, when a shameful feeling came up, and I let it go. When I experienced it again, I thought that, well, it's back. And no, it wasn't back. When you let go of an emotion, when you let go of a thought, you literally let go of a layer. But there are many, many layers to pain inside of you. And if you do this work repeatedly over and over on a day-to-day basis for the rest of your life, you will experience joy and peace that you didn't even know was possible, because I experienced these things and I didn't know. I wouldn't have known 8 years ago. I wouldn't have believed that this was I would have believed that this was impossible. And I would have looked at somebody like me that was happy and peaceful and loving and joyful, and I would have looked at the person I am now and thought I was full of shit. That this couldn't have possibly existed, that person can't possibly be that happy, because I was so dark. I expected everybody to be as dark. And the work wasn't in making money. The work wasn't in building a business. The work wasn't in reconnecting my marriage. The work for me was in letting go of the damage that was inside of me, so that as I let go of the damage, then things that weren't damaged could take their place, that didn't feel damaged, that I didn't experience as damage, could take their place. Every time you let go of anger, a little joy creeps in. Every time you let go of pain, a little peace creeps in. Every time you let go of shame, a little self-acceptance creeps in. And it's so subtle, you won't know that the work is working, except when you look back 8 years, you go, wow, I'm a completely different human being. Guys, this week, I just wrote a blog, and I'll put the link to the blog in the show notes, because this blog was about letting go. It's about the process of letting go. And you let go by getting inside of your mind and body, seeing what's in there, seeing what's happening at that moment, recognizing it, and I breathe them out. I'll take a deep breath and I'll breathe them out. And I can literally feel the energy leaving my body. And this is almost like whack-a-mole. An emotion pops up, let it go. An emotion pops up, let it go. An emotion pops up, let it go. A thought pops in, let it go. A thought pops in, let it go. An emotion pops up, let it go. And it's just a process of every day, whatever emotion pops up, the lower level emotions Like they will pop up. They don't pop up. Most people try to suppress them and repress them. They try to do something to make them go away. It's almost like they push the emotion and the thoughts back inside of them because they don't want to deal with them. But when they pop up and you let them go, they're gone and they will be replaced by higher level thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. This is the most valuable work you will ever do in your life. And when or as you free yourself from these lower level thoughts and beliefs and emotions, they will be replaced by higher level thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. And when they're replaced by higher level thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, you will be able to make more money. You will be able to create more success. You will be able to impact the world greater. You will be able to form deeper, more bonded relationships. You will begin to really respect and appreciate yourself and take care of yourself because it's the lower level of thoughts, beliefs, and emotions that are creating the self-harm, that's creating the lack of money in your life, that's creating the need for infinite amounts of money in your life, that's creating the feelings of failure. It's what's happening in your body that's got you disconnected from your spouse or your partner or your children or your significant other. It's the things that's inside of you that are keeping you in a state of survival mode, not what's happening outside of you. But when you let go of these internal conflicts, the insecurity, the inadequacy, the insignificance, when you let go of these things, that's when you start to shift from survival mode to creation mode. And as you free yourself from lower level thoughts, beliefs, emotions, you will be able to create anything you want in this world because it's the conflict inside of you that's keeping you stuck. It's not the world. The world is a whole smorgasbord of infinite possibilities and opportunities, but it's the internal conflicts that will keep you from enjoying all that is available to you. This is inner wealth. And this is the work, the inner work that creates anything you want, including health and wealth and a massive impact in the world and the most bonded, deeply loving, committed relationship you could ever imagine. Guys, grab those books. The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford, and Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins. I'm going to put the link to the blog that I wrote this week about letting go in the show notes. Go grab this, dive in. And if you're anything like me, you're going to believe that it's too simple to be working, but it's working. Trust it, repeat it, and just free yourself from all the inner damage. Hope this has been helpful. See you next week.